It's a pleasure to have you, man. I know this was a complicated one to get on the books, but we figured
Yeah,
it
we
out.
were we were a little cursed there for a bit, but I'm glad we worked it out. We're here.
Same here. Same here. So, for those that don't know, if you'd like to give a quick intro and we can get us going.
Yeah, I'm Toady Hawk on Farcaster and also on X and most other places, and that's the pseudonym that I've been using since 2021 in this space. But basically, I'm just a creator and a builder. I'm one half of Zero Rights Media, which is basically an on-chain media collective that's trying to figure out if it's possible to have sustainable ways of making media using on-chain tech and sort of throwing away some of the old Web 2 models that don't work very well, in my opinion, for media. So that's one thing that I'm focusing a lot on. And then I also recently created a mini app on Farcaster called BETRMINT that's been becoming more and more popular, and spending a lot of time recently on getting early traction for that. And the whole idea of BETRMINT, I'm sure we'll dig into it more later, but it's just to figure out a fun way of like gamifying the concept of collecting content on chain for people, so that people that want to patronize creators who are making great stuff like yourself, Jeff. And this will be kind of meta because I think this episode is actually going to be featured in a game of BETRMINT. So it just allows people to have that like trigger to go and say, okay, I'm going to go and play this game and support Jeff, and maybe make some extra bonus rewards, etc.
That's right. I love it. No,
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And there's a lot to unpack here. But I think what would be awesome is just getting to understand how you broke into Web3, what inspired you to start being a builder on chain, if as far back as you'd like to go.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I always find interesting to mention is that I actually studied journalism at university, which is interesting only because I never did it as a career. At least I felt like I never used it as a career. It's just what I kind of went into because I was a good writer when I was young, and that's what the teacher said. You should be a journalist. And then you get to college and you realize. You look ahead and you say, this is not even going to be a viable career by the time I graduate. And that ended up being the case. And most of the people that I went to school with at one of the best journalism universities in Canada here, most of the people that I went to school with never ended up practicing journalism as a career. Most of them ended up starting their own businesses like I did, or they went into PR, or they went into government, just because unfortunately, when everybody's a blogger, nobody's a blogger. And you've seen what's happened with the media over the last 15 to 20 years, and it's just not a great career for the faint of heart. I mean, there's some amazing people that do amazing work, like Mazen, for example, who's on Farcaster, and some people doing the Lord's work when it comes to like getting the news to people, but it's just not as glamorous as it once was, that's for sure. But the reason I mention that is because it's kind of interesting, because some of the stuff that I'm doing now in this iteration of what I'm building is kind of journalism adjacent, in the sense that we're, making media about on-chain topics, and educational videos about, how to live on chain, and covering some of the things that are happening in this space. So it's just kind of interesting how things come full circle sometimes. But it took a long time, for about 10, almost 15 years, actually. I had a few different businesses local to where I live. Most of them were related to like go-to-market and marketing consulting, things that I've always been pretty good at. And I had a nice little freelance consultancy for those years. And then I guess when COVID hit, it affected some of my business, like a lot of people. And I started, just going down different rabbit holes. And one of those rabbit holes was the crypto rabbit hole. And as you know, I have a podcast too, and so I talk to a lot of builders like you do, and it seems like COVID was such like a hinge point for so many people in their story about like how they took a different path, or how their paths diverged, and that was true for me too. And I guess I just started learning about Bitcoin. I started learning about Ethereum. Really was enamored by Ethereum, in the sense that you could really build stuff with it. I thought that was really cool, that you could kind of use it. I thought Bitcoin was really awesome, but then to see Ethereum and just be like, okay, you can actually there's like many money Legos. There's composability. It's open source. These are all things that I thought were really interesting. Um, NFTs were a big draw for me. I was kind of in that like cohort of like Top Shot. Played around with that a lot. Um, the sort of NFT summer, I think it was 2021. I kind of get my years mixed up sometimes, but I think it was 2021, with like Pudgy Penguins and all these big NFTs first came out. Kind of got sucked in by all that hype, and then to be honest with you, almost got like I would say almost like burnt out on that because it was so much speculative energy in so little time in that summer. And then out of that speculative energy, I happened to mint the Cryptodes project by Gremplin, and it was just such a safe haven in that market at the time, where like the Discord was just literally people saying vibe, vibe, vibe over and over again to each. I don't know if you were around then, Jeff, or if you had Cryptodes, but it was such a different vibe than what you were normally seeing, and I just fell in love with that. So I, kind of made my Toad that I had minted into my on-chain persona at that time, and that's actually where the name Toady Hawk comes from. Is one day Gremplin posted on X or on Twitter at the time, I guess it was, and said, share your lore basically, like for your Toad. And I had this dope Toad. I'll send them to you so you can put them up on the screen here.
100%, yeah.
But he's just like a cool looking Toad with a mohawk. So I gave him a pixel skateboard, and I said, this is Toady Hawk, and gave him a little bit of lore, and then that just became my PFP, and then it just kind of became my pseudonym, and there you have it. So that's kind of like the lore on getting into into Web3, the on-chain space, where the name Toady Hawk comes from, what my background is kind of, and I'll let you sort of steer from here.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thank you for the context. And one of the things that I have to follow up is were you like, so during that time period though, you had no technical background on code or developing apps or protocols, nothing like that?
No, never been a technical builder. I mean, having said that, throughout my years as an entrepreneur, I've often just learned how to do things, if only because sometimes if you don't learn it, then you're at the behest or at the control of whomever does know how to do them. So I have a lot of like interesting technical skills. Like I'm a self-taught designer, self-taught UX, and some of these things that I've learned over the years just because I had to. But yeah, not technical, not I haven't really done much coding or anything like this. So
Yeah, no, but that explains a lot because I was wondering, I'm like, how did Toady Hawk come about? And I wasn't around. So interestingly enough, I got exposed truly to like Web3 in 2016. So not in like end user sense, not even as a code, like because I have no technical background either. But I was on Capitol Hill and I was working for a congressman who actually founded the blockchain and cryptocurrency caucus, and I was his
no way.
legislative aide. Yeah, so it was just really serendipitous of how I came about Bitcoin, and immediately downloaded Coinbase, and I mean, it's on public record what I was making annually. I mean, I was making like 30K a year in USD,
Yeah,
so it's not like I had a lot to put in.
yeah,
And I had to sell it immediately. Like,
yeah.
so anyway, but it was exposed to it, fell in love with it, and
I
I
love
wanted to
that.
be a part of it in some sense. So
I heard about it around that time period too. I just was one of those people that just didn't quite grok it the first few times I heard it for whatever reason. And funny enough, for me, it was Michael Saylor of all people that I was watching
no
a video.
way.
I was watching a video and he was explaining, why he was so bullish on Bitcoin, and he was explaining why he was putting so much of his treasury of his company into Bitcoin. I was like, "Fuck, I can do that." I was like, I have a company and we have a treasury. Like, we could put some of our non-essential cash flow into Bitcoin, and that's what I did at that
Kidding.
time. And with that timing, it ended up being like a very fortuitous time to have followed Michael Saylor's
Yeah.
advice. Yeah, so it's funny how you end up getting into it, and you look back at some of the people you originally were who piqued your interest, and it's like, really? But hey, it's that time.
Yeah. No, and so like just furthering the point though, like I left it. I worked in finance, did like the VC and like bulge bracket firm. While
Yeah,
being there, I was like, I absolutely hate this. I think this is archaic. I think this is too centralized. The only like I just did there were a lot of things I didn't like, and I just kept thinking about Web3, what decentralization was, how blockchain could operate and improve all of this. And then finally, during COVID, to your point of just having this like transitioning period for a lot of people, I was like, you know what? I'm 30, don't have a mortgage, don't have kids, not yet, but this is my time to take the jump.
yeah.
And so I tried starting a company that was really honestly similar to Farcaster.
Oh wow.
Way too early. I don't even want to put it in the same breath as that because it was
Yeah,
basically like a forum that would have a token affiliated with it. And if you are putting your resume out there, if you're sourcing opportunities from your own company that would affiliate, like there would be a reward system for that. But
right.
it was just too
That's kind of
early.
cool.
Yeah, I mean, it may still have legs. I don't know. I'm not willing to go down that route. But
Timing
yeah,
is so important with these things, right? Like if you've been in this space long enough, you see things that you think, oh, if that had come out in 2025, it would have slapped, but it was too early or whatever. Yeah.
exactly. And so it's just cool to hear like from your story of like that's so relatable. Where it's like I got exposure to it, I found it interesting, but COVID hits, and it's really this like rattling experience where you're like, I've got an option to like do something different, and I'm never probably going to get it again. Might as
Yeah.
well get after it, you know?
Yeah, I think that's true. And like the on-chain space is kind of unique in that regard, where it can be a hobby, but it can very quickly sort of morph into something more than a hobby if you put in the time and the effort. And not every hobby is like that. Like you might, if you get into like horse cropping or like or like the weirdest hobbies you can think of, they're never going to become careers, right? So like that's something that is interesting about crypto, which is like when you fall down that particular rabbit hole, like yeah, there's the interesting more esoteric reasons why you might be interested in the space or philosophical reasons, but then there's also this like money aspect, which is like the moneyness of it all. Can actually make it so that you can support yourself and support your family doing what you love and teaching other people about it, which is unique.
Totally. I mean, 2023 when Solana popped off and all of the meme coin frenzy was happening, that's really where I was. So I stopped trying to build that app company, whatever. Was working as a consultant, just hustling, entrepreneurial, probably very similar to yourself. And then at the same time, I'm like, oh, this is funny. And so I start participating in it, make a couple bucks. I'm like, wait, looking at it from a broader sense, not just like these memes, you're creating these like micro economies, and there's like all of these like small liquidity pools that you could just create yourself. I think there's something there. And then simultaneously, a friend of mine from QuickNote reached out and was like, "Hey, there's an opportunity on the sales team," which got me in full
Okay,
bore. So that's where I'm
nice.
at today. But yeah, man. So a lot to relate there. But shifting gears and talking more about what you have going on today, and Betterment I want to save for the bulk because I'm super excited about that. But talking about what you're building in the media front, what does that look like? What's the goal, and how's it been so far?
Maybe if I could take like just another quick step back to kind of give some context on where where zero rights came from, because I think it's a bit important. I kind of ended the previous story, if it were, as it were, on cryptodes, and actually cryptodes was like the period right before I kind of discovered nouns, and they're very adjacent. Obviously, Gremplin being one of the co-founders of Nouns as well. So I found out about Nouns via cryptodes. It had actually launched before cryptodes, I think, if I'm not mistaken, but it launched in August of 2021, and I found out about it sort of late 2021, and I was just like enamored by this idea of like this group of like this decentralized group of people who don't know each other from Adam, and they're going to build a brand and build a community and build a movement, not top down, but from the like grassroots up, which I don't think has ever really been tried or done before, and all capitalized by a centralized treasury that's controlled by a DAO, which is such a like crazy idea and still is a crazy idea, I think. And so my mind was definitely captured by that. I started spending more and more of my time in the Nouns ecosystem. My first quote unquote job, or my first client, I guess you could call it, that I got in the Web3 space was a Nouns derivative project that was called Noun Punks. And this was like late 2021, very early 2022. This guy started this project with really cool art, but didn't really have any idea about how to market it. Um, the way I discovered it actually was I saw a Twitter post where they're like, we're launching tomorrow a 10K PFP, project based on nouns and punks, and they had like 35 followers or something on Twitter, and I ended up reaching out to the guy and being like, dude, like the art is really cool, but you can't launch a 10K PFP project tomorrow with 34 followers. Like you're going to get 34 less mints. Like nobody knows who you are. And so I kind of like begged him to reconsider launching, and he didn't listen to me and launched anyway. And of course, as you would expect, it didn't mint out for some time. And then he ended up reaching out back to me. He was like, okay, you were right. Like I was just working on those like a baby for so long, and I just wanted to get them out the birth canal. But you were right. I should have waited. Can you help me? And so he just said, like, I can't pay you anything, but if you help me and they end up minting out, then I'll make it worth your while. So that was kind of my first foray into like helping out builders in this space. Is I just like volunteered to be the community manager for lack of a better term for this Noun Punks project, and we ended up getting it minted out a couple weeks later. And I ended up working for that project for 3 or 4 months, just sort of helping them helping them build it. And as I was doing that, I got more and more ingrained in the Nouns community because at that time, Seneca, one of the founders of Nouns, was starting his project Prop House, which is a really cool experiment in like different ways of funding builders or microfunding for builders. And he wanted to do a collaboration with a bunch of different Nounish projects like NounPunk, so I worked with him on that. I did some Twitter Spaces as a result of that. Seneca really liked how I was hosting the Twitter Spaces, and ended up asking me to come and do Twitter Spaces on a weekly basis for Prop House. So here I was, kind of like stumbling my way into doing this kind of media work that I hadn't done since I graduated from college, which was many, many years before. So it's kind of interesting how that just kind of happened, I guess. And so I ended up eventually leaving NounPunk's project and was working primarily full time for Prop House for a little bit, not full time, but I was doing spaces for Prop House and like looking for other opportunities. And then some friends and I decided to launch a community project called the Noun Square in the summer of 2022. And I don't know, were you around at the time of Nouns at that time,
No.
Jeff? Because it was a really interesting time, and if you weren't there, it's hard to describe. But like Nouns just had this like crazy and palpable energy at that time, and the community was so large, and there were so many Nounish extension projects. So it wasn't just Nouns; it was like Noun Punks and all these different projects that were building interesting things that were kind of Nouns adjacent. And so we started out. The Noun Square was literally just an idea. Like, what if we did a Twitter space every single day for the Nouns auction, and just brought people up to speed on what was happening in the community? Did a quick celebration of the new Noun and called it a day. And that ended up being really popular, and it ended up becoming, like, in my opinion, like a central point of community building for the Nouns, for Nouns DAO for the next 2 years, essentially. We ended up doing a space every single day for 1,000 days in a row without missing a single
flips,
day.
man.
Which, I mean, it's not. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. It's not a sane thing to do. But yeah, we were funded by Nouns to be a community organization to sort of be that sort of touch point, that daily touch point that people could come and find out what was happening in the immediate Nouns community and the broader Nouns community. As
How
part
do
of
you
that,
come up with content every single day for 1,000? That's nuts.
well, you're right, for sure it is nuts. For one thing, we had a team of us, so there was like at some points it was like between 8 to 10 of us who were helping to do this. I don't think one single human could have done every single day without missing. So we definitely had like a group of us that was committed to doing it. And like as far as content goes, like that's a nice thing. That's actually one of the best things about the Nouns experiment is this idea of like one thing every day forever. Like that was such a crazy idea at the time, because all the NFT projects in 2021 were all about like how many of these can we print and sell all at once? Like how can we sell people 10,000 versions of this dog, or 10,000 versions of this lion, or whatever the case may be? Not throwing any shade, that's just how it was.
Yeah.
And then in that environment, you have like Punk 4156, who was the founder of Noun, saying like, what if we just threw that all on its head, and we said, what if we just like minted one noun only per day every day? So the community grows by one only every day. It would take 25 years or something like this to get to 10,000. Just completely different than what you saw in any other project. But some of the brilliance of that, and why you've seen that particular element of Nouns be copied over and over again with the daily auction, is that it does cause this like daily hook for the community. That's like, oh, let's go check what the Noun is, and okay, well, what else is happening in the community, etc. When I say that that's still being copied to this day, we see QR right now with Jake, blowing up. I think it just hit 6 million market cap yesterday. And the idea of QR is actually a fork of Nouns. And the idea is like it's a QR code that leads to a different site every day. It's like tokenizing. It's like the raw attention element of Nouns, sort of formulated into a different type of project. But that single daily touch point, that like doing one thing on chain every day touch point of Nouns, is I think what actually is the most special sauce of what they built. There's lots of them, but that's the main thing, I think. And so like in our defense, like doing that show every day, we always had something to talk about because it was a new Noun at the very least. Like there were days, I tell you, there were days like at 3 a.m. when we're like, there's the new Noun day, woohoo, a duck, like, and we went back to sleep. So there wasn't just always like this amazing vibrational show, but there was something to talk about at the very least every single day. So that's how I stumbled my way into doing media, to be honest with you. Before that, all of my work maybe was like communication based or like media based, but definitely more on the side of like go to market, branding, logos, and these types of things for companies, and not in the crypto space at all. So yeah, I guess I just found out that I had a knack for doing this kind of media hosting, and people seemed to like tuning in, and so we kept doing it. And then also as a result of the popularity of that show, we started doing more video content as well, because that's kind of where the meta was shifting, and people were tuning less into Twitter Spaces and looking more for like video streams and live streams, video podcasts like what you're doing. So that was about that time that I started Zero Pod, which was just meant to be like let's take one aspect of nouns, which is like the zero copyright CC0 element, and like what if we just champion that as a media organization? We just say like let's have a podcast that is completely zero copyright, just like the projects of the devs that we're going to have on here to talk about what they're building on Ethereum. What if we like mirror those principles in the principles of what we're doing ourselves and make it completely open for anyone to remix, etc. And so that's where Zero Pod came from. We started doing Jack Wilds was working with us at that point already, and we started doing educational videos about different elements of on-chain life, about like the broader Ethereum ecosystem, and other like what I would say like Ethereum adjacent or nouns adjacent ecosystems like Base and Optimism. We found people really loved those things, and so we started leaning more and more into that video direction. And then eventually that culminated in January of this year, when we basically rebranded the Noun Square from like being a fully nouns focused community hub to being like a zero copyright media org, very lean media org that's just basically concentrating on Zero Pod, our main podcast, Must Clank, which is a podcast that my co-creator Jack Wilds has about the Clanker ecosystem, and then just other videos about the Ethereum ecosystem. That kind of brings us up to present on what we're trying to do with Zero Rights Media. So Zero Rights Media is kind of like, you could think of it as the grandson or the descendant of the seed that was planted with the Noun Square
With
originally.
nouns. That's so
And also,
fascinating, and thanks for the education here. Forgive the ignorance. I'm new. I mean, new in the sense that like I got on Farcaster a couple months ago. I think I've been there for a total of 2 months. So
nice.
I was like, prior to this, I told you, like, did my stint on Capitol Hill, tried starting a company, not really knowing what I was doing. I knew I wanted to build it on Ethereum just because that's where everyone built. But then after that period, there was like a lull where I was like a central exchange type of person. Like, I just had my stuff on Coinbase or Kraken, whatever, but I wasn't like involved. And then that happened in 2023 with the meme frenzy. That's when I was just only introduced to Solana, and that's it. And then a friend of mine that worked at Phantom Foundation, Fantom, not the wallet, introduced me, and start, like now Sonic, introduced me to the entire world of Web3, at least tried to. And then actually was the one that introduced me to Farcaster. But, I'm still trying to put the pieces together. So, for example, like Nouns, I've obviously seen it around, but not knowing full context of what that was until really getting the rundown just now. So hearing about this, hearing about like what you're doing makes so much more sense. And, there's just this is the point, is there's so much being built in this ecosystem of just Web3 as an entity that it's really difficult to keep up with everything, and so
it's actually impossible. And you're better off to just admit that to yourself. Like you can't be everything to everyone. You can't focus on every ecosystem. You can't catch every airdrop. And if you try, you're going to drive yourself nuts,
Absolutely. And I think the way that I've kind of shaped out, and it's so cool, like you've hitched, like you've made your lane where it's like, we're focused on Ethereum developers. We're focused on like, all of the things that you just described is what I'm trying to encompass with this podcast. Is just like, I love Farcaster. I'm an early adopter of Farcaster. I'm still, my FID is like still in the millions, but like I still consider myself new to the space where it's like, I can build something here. And I love all of the people that I've been introduced to that are building, especially things like BETRMINT. I think there are so many cool protocols, apps, and the way that founders are building is so unique, coming from that like traditional VC background, seeing like the idea be implemented, nothing built, ask for funding, then build. I think
Hmm.
what Farcaster's doing is flipping it on its head of saying, I'm resourceful, I'm bootstrapping, I'm going to build an MVP that's functioning, and there's an entire audience ready to use it in real time. Infrastructure, Nanar and Farcaster have me covered, so it's really low cost to just ship something. And
Yeah.
for me, I'm like, I want to support that, I want to build around that, and I want to bring people that are building like that onto a show to give them a spotlight.
Yeah, well, when we talked about like the moneyness aspect of on-chain technology, that's kind of what I mean is like sometimes people poo-poo the money side of it being like, oh, we're here for the tech or whatever else, but like money is part of the tech, and that's kind of the point is that you can do something like what you just described, like building an app, and you can build a token into it, and given the right regulatory clarity, you can bootstrap it in a way that you couldn't do, without the tech being there. So I think that's an exciting part of the way it all works.
Absolutely. And I think even so, just, shamelessly segueing into Betterment and everything that's going on there, it's like, this is why I love Farcaster. And I feel like I can't say it enough. The reason why I love Farcaster is the community that it's somehow like, it's crazy. It's an anomaly of how, like, I love the, like, analogy of, like, it's just Christian rap. It's like,
Yeah.
it's just like all of these like really positive people that are just looking to build with like-minded people. So I don't know if I probably reached out to you or you reached out to me or whatever, but like the opportunity to work with Betterment, no doubt,
Yeah.
like I'm in. Like I don't care what it offers, I don't care what the return is, but like I'm in this mindset of just like I want to help, and whatever comes of that, great, And so
Podcaster is
having
very collaborative. That's what I've found as well, and makes it very easy to be a builder and a creator in this space.
For sure. And just going to like the experience of working with you with Betterment, and then we can, talk about more of like what's being developed there and what's under the hood. But for me, like I was literally just like, yeah, I'm open to it. What's the deal? And then seeing it in real time. So it's one thing to explain it, but then to actually be a content creator and be on the receiving end of it, being like a part of that entire process, it's so exciting. Not even for the like payout aspect of it, but I think for me it's like you're getting engagement. So for like for the smaller channels and content creators that are out there, it's the best platform, right? Because yeah, you get the payout if it works successfully, and that's all thanks to you and the platform you've
Hmm.
built. But then simultaneously, it's like you see the interaction and the possibility of like building an audience, getting engagement, and I think that is like the undervalued component of Betterment. And maybe this is a good opportunity to explain what Betterment is for those that don't know. But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, I could go for days.
yeah. I've been talking about this a lot on the TL lately about how Betterment is one example, Noise App is another example, but like the new meta is distribution as distribution. And I'll keep repeating that because I think it is powerful. It's, creators do want and need distribution, meaning they need people to see their content, engage with their content, enjoy their content, subscribe to their content. That's all sort of the traditional distribution that we think of when we think of content. But with tokens, you can actually literally distribute to people. You can take a token that you might have that relates to your project or you as a creator or a Zora coin that you minted or a clanker that you claim. And you can actually distribute that through different apps to sort of make a new link with your community. And I think that's really powerful and sort of leads into the context of what we're building with Betterment.
Right, absolutely. And I think maybe what would be helpful, Toady, is sharing just like a little bit of the process of what the app is, what the like how it operates from the starting point till the end. Maybe if content creators get a hold of this show and for the first time are hearing about Betterment.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. I just want to pause for a quick second. This isn't live, right? You do some
No, no,
post
no. This
editing.
is all post editing. Yeah.
I just noticed that somehow Riverside turned off my mic at some point when we were chatting, and so you've been getting my AirPods feed, and I don't know how good that is. Is it coming out in clear for you,
Oh
or
yeah, you're good. So when
do you?
I've actually had it in the past where like there will be a pause, mic drops, other ones picked up, and
Yeah,
then when I'm going through editing, it picks up both track. They call them tracks. So you're
yeah.
you're good.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is do you want me to reset the mic to be my this guy here, or just keep going with the AirPods? Up to you.
It's the same in my headphones. I haven't even heard drop off yet.
Okay. All right,
So I think
we'll
I
just
think
keep
we're
on going.
good. But yeah.
So
But
this is just for show.
yeah,
Well, I hope it's okay. I hope the sound's not too bad. But
I'm sure it'll be
uh,
fine.
amazing. Yeah. So Betterment, I guess you could think of Betterment as a gamification of incentivizing mints or incentivizing the idea of supporting on-chain creators. And so if you're familiar, you may or may not be familiar if you're watching this with protocols like Boost.xyz or Layer 3. They're kind of like questing protocols that make it so that you can give people little benefits, little airdrops, little bonuses for collecting your on-chain content. And so those are really cool, and we took a lot of inspiration from what they've built and what we learned from like Adam Levy, for example, from Blueprint. I was in one of his cohorts. It's an amazing content accelerator. If you're a content creator, you should definitely look into applying to the next one. He taught us a lot about how to use tokens, meme coins, and other tokens to sort of take advantage of some of these protocols and incentivize people's behavior to collect your work, and therefore, make revenue and increase your distribution as a creator. But what I was thinking at one point was like, how can we take that idea of like using tokens to increase distribution for creators, and how can we gamify it? How can we give it a little bit of like a temporal aspect? How can we give it a little bit of urgency? How can we inject a little bit of dopamine so that people actually like put it in their calendar and they say, I'm going to come out such and such a day at such and such a time and I'm going to collect Jeff's work. And that's where the idea for Betterment came from. So Betterment, you could maybe guess from the name, is that you're getting in this mini app. It's a mini app on Farcaster, and you're betting on creators by minting their work. And so you drop into the app when there's a round live. And let's use this example because I think you're planning to put this podcast onto Betterment. So if you're watching this in the Betterment app, Jeff put this in here. It's minted on the Pods platform, which is an amazing platform that lets podcasters mint their own content so that people can patronize them by collecting it. So if you see this in the app, you collect at least one edition, but as many as you'd like. Then you get a free ticket to spin what we call the neon flywheel. It's just like a fun little sort of Wheel of Fortune-esque neon wheel that you spin, and you get bonuses back. So the two things to me are like very separate. There's the one action, which is you collect a piece of content from our feature creator, and that's our North Star. That's what we're trying to do as an app, is like amplify, edify creators who maybe aren't able to get that distribution elsewhere or not as well. Put that in front of people, put it in front of people's eyeballs so that they might collect it, become part of their community, watch their content, etc. So that's the first step. People are coming in, they're collecting that content, and then as a separate item, you're getting these free tickets to spin and get a little bonus, and you could get 1x back what you paid for the mint, or 2x, or 5x, or even 100x back through the jackpot. So just like it takes advantage of this like human obsession with getting that dopamine hit, and like you're doing a little bit of gambling, but it's not in such a way where it's like you're paying for this and you're spinning and like you're trying to be a casino. It's really more so like, how can we just gamify the existing structures that like Boost and Layer 3 and other protocols have premiered, basically, by taking the bonus that they would normally use. Like normally they would say, oh, you get 80% back if you mint. Instead of just taking that one lump sum, how can we just take it, gamify it a little bit so that people have a reason to show up and sort of a little bit of dopamine, get in there, spin the wheel, have some fun, and potentially win some tokens.
Yeah, well put. And I think it's interesting. So do you think some of the inspo came from Boost and Layer 3 for you? Is that where this all came from?
100%. And also from other mini apps that we're sort of exploring this space of like something fun to do every day in a mini app. Like Warp Slot was a huge inspiration. What Colin's building with that. Warp Slot is an app, if you haven't heard of it, where you can basically just go in and you get 5 spins a day to get like tiny little amounts of different meme coins. So that's a really cool model, because meme coins and tokens will like donate to their pool, because it's a little bit of extra visibility in his app, and his app gets a lot of eyeballs. So that's a cool little flywheel that he created. And actually, funny enough, as an aside story, when I first had this idea about having people mint and then sort of spin to win, I actually reached out to him first, and I said, hey, like, is this something that you can maybe build into Warp Slide? Would that be interesting? And he was like, oh, maybe. Like, I don't know if we would do it in the app. Maybe it's a separate app. And so that conversation happened. And then he was planning to go away for a week to Coachella, I think. And I said, okay, well, we'll talk when you get back. And then when he left town, I started chatting with NetNose, who's a friend of mine from the Yellow Collective, which is a Nouns fork on base that I founded last year in the service of artists and creators. So I met NetNose there. We had been wanting to build something for a while, and he's like, "Well, why don't we just do it? Like, I'm a dev, and you've got the idea, and we can execute on this together." I kind of jokingly have said to people that like I vibe coded Betterment. I brought the vibe, and NetNose brought the code. best way to do it. So then we just started sort of working on it, and by the time a week had passed, we basically had an app already running, and so already ready to launch. And so I ended up reaching out back to Colin. I'm like, hey, I still want to chat because we set a time to chat. I was like, I really want to see how we can collaborate and whatnot. But I decided then to just building it, and I think that was the right way to do it because I think honestly our concept would have sullied up the simplicity of the warp slot game. Like that's one of the beautiful things about warp slot and why it's so popular is you go in, you spin, you leave, and it's kind of like it's very clean. And so I think there's room for all sorts of different mini apps. But that was kind of an interesting chapter of the development of Betterment. And something I've often done, which is like have an idea and just let's give it away. And sometimes you're just like, hey, that idea is really good. You should just actually build it.
No, absolutely. And I think so. Questions I have following up here is what does the path look like for Betterment? Are you satisfied with how the product is today, how it functions, and do you think that this is more of just like how are we going to scale it from a marketing standpoint, or are there other iterations, are there other concepts that you're thinking about of maybe implementing?
It's interesting because the blocker is not marketing on this, which it often is for apps and these types of projects. I think like we're kind of at almost like max attention when it comes to like getting the amount of people to play because we run this round once every other day, basically. So it's running Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. EST. And we put around $1,500 worth of tokens into a prize pool. And then basically it's essentially first come, first serve when you come in and spin and claim the prize pool. And the prizes have been going so fast that we can almost not keep up. Like we run these rounds and they originally ran when we first started like 40 minutes and then it was 20 minutes and then all of a sudden it was 10 minutes. And we have this thing called the Better Believers tier, which allows people who hold a certain amount of the token that we launched as a companion to this app, which is $better, BETR. If you hold 50 million of those tokens, you get early access.
Is it 50 or 15?
50, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, 50 million, which is like a $150 or $160 worth of the token. If you hold that, then you get an early notification that the game has gone live. We never wanted to token gate the app because we wanted it to be accessible to as many people as possible. But we thought it'd be nice to give a little perk to people who have been supporting the app by holding the coin. And so we made this tier called Better Believers with, just a group chat for alpha, and you get this 10-minute notification. But then we got to a point like 10 days ago where the games were going so fast that it didn't even go to public. So we did one with Los Fomos about 10 days ago, and before the notification even went out for the public, it was gone. All the prizes were gone. We're like, okay. NetNose and I looked at that and we're like, okay, we need to consider what we do here. And so we ended up talking to the people in that group chat, the people who were most benefiting from that head start. We were like, look, we need to do something here because if new people aren't able to play, then we just can't grow this community, and it's just kind of a circle jerk, and that's not fun for anybody. So we ended up instituting a 10 spin limit during that head start to try to extend the game a little bit. And even having done that about 7 days ago, the rounds are still ending in like 12 or 13 minutes. So they're only lasting like 3 minutes of public. And so all that to say, we don't have a demand problem. There's lots of people who want to come and spin. What our real problem actually is the real blocker is just getting enough tokens to be able to do the games. Now we did think ahead on this when we launched our token, which we did via the Clanker site, and we were one of the first to take advantage of their vault, their vault and dev pre-buy features, which allowed us to basically earmark 50% of the entire supply of the token for airdrops and community and prizes in the app.
And you had a successful airdrop, may I shamelessly plug. That was awesome.
We did do a small airdrop, which we had promised to do in the original tokenomics. That was about 2 weeks ago now, and we just basically selected 400 people who are super active on Firecaster mini apps or on OG, Firecaster native communities, and we got those lists from those individual devs and communities, and put together sort of a super list of 400 people who had been really avidly supporting and actively supporting these apps and communities. And we gave them, an airdrop. I think when we airdropped, it was like $20 worth of better,
and now it's for 60, right?
Now it's 60 as of today. I mean, we don't concentrate on the price, but sometimes it can be an indicator of.
But that's a significant amount of dough that is airdropped to somebody that's just not even potentially using Betterment yet.
Yeah, exactly. Like that specific one wasn't for Betterment users. We do have other airdrops coming up because, like I said, we did reserve a good portion of the supply for this type of community distribution. And future airdrops will be based on use of the app. So we're tracking something called Better Karma, which just gives people a little bit of leaderboard to competition, which is always fun, and they can earn better karma by spinning the wheel during games, winning, sharing it with their friends, and also a multiplier for holding the token. So in the future, there's opportunities for people to be airdropped, and I think that's the way tokens should be used. It's like we're able to essentially create money out of thin air, which is a crazy thing to be able to do in this day and age, and you can use it to literally like distribute it to the people who deserve it for supporting the project that you're working on, and that's kind of like the magic of this whole thing, and that's what we've been trying to do with the way we set up the tokenomics for Betterment. But all that to say that we do have some of that allocation that we're able to use for prizes in the app, which gives us a certain amount of runway to be able to run a certain number of these games. But we don't want better to be the prize for every single one of these rounds. We want to be able to be a simultaneous curator of both on-chain content and on-chain tokens. And in order to do that, we need on-chain tokens as well to be willing to participate with us and contribute tokens towards the pool to be able to make for these hype rounds, get more eyeballs on their token, get more micro distribution for their token, which is actually really bullish for these projects. And that's something that I learned from Adam Levy, actually going back to that Blueprint cohort that I was in. He talked about how he had negotiated a sponsorship for his own podcast, Mint, which is an amazing podcast and one of the first truly on-chain podcasts that anyone had done. Is he negotiated this deal with Bonsai, I think it was, which is a meme coin from the Lens ecosystem. And he said, look, like you give me the X amount of Bonsai tokens from your community fund, and I will promise you that I will never sell them. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to throw them into Boost. I'm going to throw them into Layer 3, and I'm going to use them to reward people that mint my content. And you're going to increase the distribution of your community by X-fold. And they're all going to be interested in what you're doing, and they're going to come check out Bonsai. And he was one of the people that kind of pioneered this idea of like a new non-traditional model of sponsorship that kind of is win-win-win for all the different parties. Again, inspiration for what we're doing with Betterment. But a lot of these token projects, like if they're smart, they know that like those tokens that you may have reserved for yourself at the start of your project, and hopefully you did, because that's one of the main reasons to launch a token is to be able to have those tokens to use and distribute, and you can still do a fair launch, but then have these tokens to reward your community. And if you've done that, I mean, what are you going to do with those tokens? You don't want to sell them. You're not going to sell them on your own community, dump them on your community.
Yeah,
so they're kind of like in a way trapped, right? And so I've talked about it as being like a way, using Betterment or using Noise or using some of these other interesting apps, you can actually kind of like Midas touch these tokens back into existence by distributing them out to people who are doing a certain thing, supporting creators in the example of Betterment. And so we found some token projects that have been amazing, that have understood that. Like I want to shout out Apex from Vale. Met with him for the first time in person at FarCon earlier this year, and I was there with Rachel Wilkins, who's an on-chain creator, has a podcast called The Good News Is. And we were chatting at one of the base events, and she said, "Hey, why don't we take the next 7 episodes of The Good News Is, which are launching on pods, and we'll premiere them all on Betterment every Monday for the next 7 weeks. And you take Vale from your community fund and you sponsor it, and it's like win-win-win." And to his credit, Apex immediately was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, I've got these tokens. He was using them, as many token projects do, to incentivize LP, for example, on Aerodrome, and lots of ways on the DeFi side that people use to incentivize the growth of the community. But Apex was smart enough to see that, like, you do want to incentivize, the DeFi side of things, but you also want to incentivize the education side of things and the eyeball side of things, and get people to be introduced to your token in a fun and interesting way. That's like equally important. And so, he was one of the first to sort of say, here's, $10,000 worth of Veil tokens, go nuts. And we've been lucky to work with him over the last 6 weeks. And then even better, just because of the nature of tokens in this space, it is a double-edged sword, but in this case it worked out because Veil has been pumping lately. And so I think we've got an extra 3 or 4 weeks that we can do free of charge, more or less, to continue to help Rachel. I think Rachel has made, since we started, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I can find out and let you know, but I think she's made more than $1,500 in rewards for her podcast, which
No,
she's gone on the record as saying, like, she used to have a podcast that was in the top 100 for her category on Spotify and never made a dime for it the entire time. So
no, I can attest the power of Betterment for a content creator is second to none of at least anything that I've seen, especially for a small, like, I started this thing like a month ago, and for the one that I did on Betterment, I was like, hey, let's do it. I didn't expect anything, just because, like, on Pods, granted, it's an amazing platform, and I've made a couple of bucks off of the podcast that I put out, but Betterment immediately, and I think, for that short stint, I held the record of the fastest sell-off, and not that I had anything to do with it, but I mean,
I'm sure you did too.
but I made $300 off of it, man. And I'm like, that's real money for an episode that, to my point, though, is encouraging for content creators, not just for the $300, but more importantly, like, you're seeing the engagement, you're getting new eyeballs. And I think that's the, like, true power of Betterment, is for content creators that are coming up. If you're able to get on, like, I beg you to be on Betterment as much as I possibly can. And one of the things and then one of the things that it has me considering, that I've always gone back and forth with, and we could talk about this offline, but having a community token, right? Mm-hmm. That incentivizes a community to participate, but in an effective manner, like finding people that would want to come on this podcast, finding startups like Betterment or Bracky or Ponder or any of these that are on Farcaster that should get a spotlight, like rewarding them in that sense, or just being a participant and going off the leaderboard, whatever the case. But, like, I think those are the types of things that we're going to start trending towards in Farcaster, and then even more broadly all throughout Web3.
Yeah, I agree. And sort of, as I said earlier, that's one of the inherent parts of on-chain tech, is this ability to, like, add moneyness to different things that didn't used to have that moneyness even as an option. And fans of content is a big part of that. Like we talked about with Rachel having a major podcast that she'd make pennies off of, if anything, from Spotify, and Spotify was getting all the distribution and showing all the ads and whatever else. And that money just doesn't trickle down to most creators. Like, there might be like a 1%, I don't know what percent it is, of creators who can make bank on places like Spotify and TikTok and YouTube. But for everyone else, it's like this long tail of nothingness where you're just not making anything for all the work that you're doing. And it's hard work, like, if you are creating content, it is hard work. It takes a lot of time. You're taking the time with me right now to interview me, to chat with me. After this, you're going to have 6 hours or more of editing. I know, I do it for my own podcast. I know what it's like. I know you probably do all your own editing. It's going to be hours of work to get this into a palatable piece of content that you can put out. And there's nothing more discouraging, again, I know, because I've been in your shoes, to put something out on Pods and then just watch it sit there. And it's like, people don't collect it because they don't see it. And attention is just so scarce. People don't mean to, they're not trying to be mean. They're not trying to say, I don't want to collect Jeff's content because I don't like it, or I'm not going to collect Toady's thing because I don't like him. But maybe that's the case. But most of the time, it's just they just don't see it, or there's no prompt for them to go and do the thing. And so
I think it's the incentive piece, Toady. It's like, even for me, if I see a cool podcast, like, transparently, it's like, okay, I have minted in the past, but I think the reality is what Betterment has done is it has incentivized someone to go support a content creator in which they haven't done before. If I go on Spotify and I go listen to the latest podcast I'm listening to, that's what I'm used to. So as an end user, that's what I'm used to. Why are you now telling me transparently? So I take no offense to this. Why would you tell me that I need to spend $2 to go listen? Because what Betterment's doing is it's shifting the mindset of, one, you're supporting, but now if it's a part of this raffle, you're now incentivized where you will get a big payout if you hit big. If not, better luck next time.
Yeah, and maybe they're watching your content and maybe they're not. We do try to feature the content really prominently during the periods that there's not a game going on. So right now there's like 48 hours between each game, and we do try to we prominently feature the content. It's in an embed, so people who come to the app, they can actually watch it. So we're doing our part, I think, to try to focus eyeballs on the actual content.
And not to discredit or take away from that at all, because I know you all have for sure. I do appreciate it, because the goal here is also, Toady, like, it's not about, and it sounds so cliche, but it's like, this is not, if it was about the money, I mean, like you just pointed out to, I'm spending a ton of time in post at it. I'm spending a ton of time, like, gathering thoughts and preparing for the interview. All of those things, like all content creators are doing. But I think the one thing that's so special is the fact that, like, you're trying, like, what I'm trying to do with Startup Radar is, like, I just want founders or people that are looking to start something to listen to people like yourself that had the unconventional route. There's a little that I hope that they get the little takeaways from Toady, which are, it was an unconventional route. I was a journalist major. Like, I started as a consultant, as a grinder, and as an entrepreneur. I taught myself how to code. Like, even if it is quote unquote vibe coding, I still know how to do front end stuff. I had to go on Spaces. Like, you took all of the elements of your experience and applied it to what you're doing today. So it's like, hearing that, those are the pieces that I want the community to take away from and, like, be able to do it themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you can say money doesn't matter, but at the end of the day, you can't pay your mortgage, you can't pay your rent and exposure, and you can't pay in good vibes either. And so if we want people to actually create meaningful art and meaningful content in our space, then we do have to figure out ways for creators to get paid. And it shouldn't be that difficult, because the creators that are currently creating in the non-Web3 space are making tons of money for the platforms that they're creating for. They're just not making any money themselves, right? And so that's a huge opportunity that I know Coinbase and Base and the Coinbase wallet have been trying to tackle with their new Coinbase wallet, which I'm excited about. But that is what we need to tackle, is like, how can we make sure that people get paid for doing quality content and contributing in that way to the space? And is that going to happen completely from Betterment? No. But if someone can go and make a podcast, and eventually, by the way, we're going to be opening this up to other types of content as well, not just podcasts. But if you're creating something and you're making money for it because it was featured on Betterment, and then you're casting about it and you're getting on the rewards leaderboard for Farcaster, you're making $25 from that, and you're getting tipped with noise, and there's just all these different ways that you're being rewarded for your contributions to the network. Maybe at a certain point in time, you're able to look and say, okay, I don't have to go and do this shift at Wendy's anymore. I can actually put my full effort into this, make it better, do more of it, and that's the kind of flywheel that we have to try to keep spinning.
No, 100%. And I think, look, like, I'm fortunate enough to not be in a situation where I'm reliant on the content that I'm creating, which allows me to do this without, like, the stress. And so the money does matter. Like, fully agree with you on that. It's just like how I see it in my personal experience. Like, that's where I'm at, where it's like genuinely trying to create content that allows individuals to learn and educate themselves on how to become a founder. Right. Yeah. And then, but to your point, I couldn't agree more. I mean, and it's not like it hurts. It's not like it hurts to have that money, like, come in the bag. Like, I want to have a kid soon. Those kids aren't cheap. You know what I mean?
Talked about that. We talked about that offline, but it's not cheap to have kids in this economy. So there you go.
Exactly. So, like, there's total motivation there. But I think the most important thing that you all are doing that I am so excited about is democratizing that access, where it's so centralized within these major institutions like the YouTube, the Spotify, et cetera, where you can't even, like, you're making pennies. Like, for Rachel, who you were referring to make pennies and have a top 100, that's insanity, right? And so I think there's a huge opportunity here for Betterment. And so you just alluded to it, which was going to be my next question, is what are you going to be doing to expand? And it sounds like it's not just podcasts that you're going to be offering, but there's other pieces of art, other, pieces of content that you're going to be supporting as well?
Yeah, so we built in why we started with podcasts is sort of a twofold answer. For the MVP of this thing, which it still is MVP, we've only been doing this for just over a month. And for the MVP, why we decided to build it with the Pods contracts is because Pods uses an old Zora contract actually that is very straightforward. Where if someone mints and it costs them $1, then 30% of that goes directly to the creator, and it's very very cut and dry. And so it's very easy to build a rewards mechanism in that way. Whereas some of the other attention mechanisms like coins and these types of things, they are really cool, new, interesting ways of gaining distribution, but they're not as cut and dry when it comes to like $1 spent equals this many cents into the pocket of the creator. So that's why we started with Pods, and also just because the Pods team is so goated. Like, look, Lucas is
They're awesome.
amazing.
We
Dan
dealt
is
with them. I
amazing.
mean, yeah, they're fantastic for
They're
sure.
so good, so supportive. They really want to see creators win, and so it was just an obvious thing to build it that way. Also, I have a podcast, Zero Pod, so it kind of makes sense too to be able to dog food your own product. So if we didn't have a creator to feature, we could feature this podcast. And also my co-creator at Zero Rights, Jack Wilds, has a podcast about the Clanker ecosystem, which is really cool, called Must Clank. And so those are just two options that we have to sort of fill the content if we needed to do so. Now that hasn't been a problem because people have been pretty psyched about being featured in Betterment, but that was part of the reason why we did that too. So yeah, to answer your question, we are looking at expanding it to. I want to support all kinds of artists. I want to support animators and musicians and all these different types of creative people that make make Farcaster, make base, make this ecosystem such a more colorful place. And in order to do that, we just have to figure out which platforms to integrate with to make sure that the reward split makes sense and whatnot. So we're in the process of doing that right now, and in the coming, I'd say weeks, less than 2 weeks, we'll have some different types of content showing up in the app on different platforms. So yeah.
Are these teasers? Are you able to talk about which ones you're going to be doing yet or not yet?
Well, I can't, only because we actually still are trying to figure out which platforms are the best ones to use. So I actually can't name it'll be on this platform. All I can say is that we're looking at the platforms and trying to figure out which one is the best one to use, so that whatever creator we feature is going to get max creator reward for the mints. Because that's what makes it work. If we run this and the creator's only making 10 cents on the dollar, it just doesn't really work. So
Good for you. That's really cool. So you said, how long is it going to take until you said 2 weeks,
yeah,
more or less?
we're shipping pretty fast. I'm probably honestly being overly cautious on that. We'll definitely have something in the next like less than 2 weeks for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And one
So you'll
thing,
see.
I know we're coming up on the hour, but one thing that I really have been focused on talking to founders, hearing their story is like the theme that I've been focusing on a bunch is figuring out the resources needed. And like, did you have to go raise money, even if it was a small seed from like a friends and family to get Betterment launched? Or was it all just being resourceful, figuring out the things that you had around you within Farcaster and Nanar, and even like getting a dev to help build the product out? Like, was it
Yeah.
all? I think I'm probably answering the question, but
Yeah, it was fully bootstrapped in the sense that we didn't take any funding or anything like this or any grants to build this. We just said, let's see if this is a good idea, because sometimes you think it's a good idea on paper and then you put it out in the world and people are like, not for me. So we just didn't we didn't know what to expect. So NetNose and I, luckily, we've been friends for a couple of years now, and so we kind of know each other. We trust each other, even though I've never met him in person. He's from Italy and I'm in Canada, but we've talked a lot on Farcaster. And we trusted each other, and he was willing to sort of do the tech side if I did the business side and the marketing side. And so we kind of teamed up on it and just said, let's see how it goes and see if people like it. And very quickly if there's any kind of traction for your product. Like, I know there's been some discussion on Farcaster recently about how product market fit is misused as a term all the time, and it really means you can't keep up with how many orders people are sending, and that may all be the case. But I think if you just use it as a term for like traction, like early traction, like maybe there's something here. We definitely saw that early on and knew that it was worth spending more time on building it and seeing if we can overcome the blockers to scaling it, which, as I mentioned earlier, is just basically getting more token projects to see the value of partnering with Betterment and getting their token in front of people, curated in front of people every once every day. just like the creators. The creators see it right away because it's easy for the creators. Someone like yourself, has something featured in the app. They see a bunch of new collectors come in. They got blown up on the timeline, and they make $300. It's not a hard sell. The token side is a bit more difficult for people to see the value, but they're starting to. And I think there's definitely something there. So we'll keep at it.
So
And we're also cooking. We're cooking on some interesting other strategies of how could, I don't want to say too much, but like how could we make it so that there was never a dearth of tokens to use for the game. I'll just leave it at
leave it
that.
at that.
That's something that we're thinking about a lot. Mhm.
I think I'm picking up what you're putting down, but I think that's awesome. And did you think, one of the last questions, because again, I want to be respectful for your time. I know you got kid duty as well, but did you anticipate having this type of success this quickly with Betterment?
Uh, no. I guess the answer is no. Like
Yeah,
I had no idea. It's the first mini app that I've ever created. I haven't tried to do it before. As we mentioned earlier in the interview, I'm not a technical builder, not even really a vibe coder. When I say vibe coding, I'm literally just making a joke because it's NetNose who's done all of the tech work on this. I did sort of the UI design, UX design, a lot of this stuff, which has also been a learning curve. But he did all of the tech work on this, and I just had no idea what the demand was going to be. Sometimes you just put things out in the world and you don't know if people are going to find them fun or if they're going to find them confusing or if they're going to find them whatever. So yeah, I've been definitely overwhelmingly happy with how the reception has been. I'm not surprised in the sense that like Farcash is always at least willing to try things out, and I think I have a good reputation, I hope, within the ecosystem of someone who does like try to ship interesting things and continues to build on them if they have traction. Hopefully that helped, to let people know this is something I should probably check out. Maybe it's cool. And we're building a community. Like slowly, these communities don't build overnight, or at least I don't think it's healthy when they do. And so the fact that we only have 3 games a week does mean that like our growth of our communities may be a little bit slower and more measured than it would otherwise be. But that kind of harkens back to what we talked about earlier with the inspiration from nouns, or like to bring it to the modern day QR, where like having something every day, in our case it's 3 times a week, but having something on a regular basis where it's an event, it's something fun for the community to gather around, is something that I learned in nouns, and I think it does help. It does help with community building.
absolutely. Toady Hawk, you're a legend. You're a gentleman and a scholar. I cannot thank you enough for making the time today. I cannot
Sure.
believe we actually got it on the books. I'm
It's on
so
the
pumped.
books.
Yeah,
It's
no,
on
we did it.
chain. It's going to be there forever now. So
We did it. Amazing. But man, look forward to everything that is going to be happening with Betterment. Would love to just continue the conversation. Have you back on whenever. Would love to shamelessly invite myself onto the show if you're ever in need of another person or another guest. Would love to do it. And yeah, just enjoy talking to you, man.
We'll complete the exchange program at some point. Get you on Zero Pod and hear the death story. Actually, would love that.
That's amazing, man. Well, much appreciated. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, man. See you on
All right,
chain.
brother. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.